6 months had passed since the fleet arrived at Earth. The galaxy was no longer the same place it had been before the awakening began. Captain Yoon Hana stood on the bridge of what used to be the ESS Defiance, but the ship had grown far beyond its original form. It was now a living city that existed in multiple dimensions, home to thousands of beings from dozens of species. The transformation had spread to every corner of known space. The galactic hegemony's rigid control structures had dissolved peacefully as species after species remembered their true nature. Instead of rulers and subjects, there were now teachers and students, all learning from each other. Admiral Vextar, who now went by his birth name Kethvar, worked alongside Captain Yoon Hana as they planned humanity's first major mission since the awakening. The Scarix had become gardeners again, using their natural abilities to terraform dead worlds and bring them to life. The Outer Rim territories are still afraid, Kethvar reported. Some species out there haven't felt the awakening, yet they think we're coming to conquer them like the old hegemony did. Then we show them otherwise, Captain Yoon Hana said. We bring gifts instead of weapons. We offer knowledge instead of demands. Chief Engineer Bei Jun had evolved beyond his original hybrid form. He was now something like a living avatar of architect technology, able to exist in pure energy or solid matter as needed. He moved between ships and worlds, helping other species unlock their own dormant capabilities. The network is almost complete, he reported. Every major world now has at least one awakened individual who can guide the others. The process is becoming self-sustaining. On Earth, the planet had become unrecognizable to those who remembered the old days. Cities floated in the sky, connected by bridges of crystallized light. The oceans teemed with new life forms that existed in perfect harmony with their environment. Humanity had learned to create instead of consume, to nurture instead of exploit. Dr. Kim Sora had become something like Earth's memory keeper. She maintained the vast databases of architect knowledge that continued to surface from the underground networks. Her underwater laboratory had grown into a crystal palace that existed both in the ocean depths and in quantum space. We've barely scratched the surface, she told President Lim Dongwu during one of their regular meetings. The architects left us knowledge that will take centuries to fully understand. Technologies for traveling between galaxies. Methods for creating entire universes. The ability to nurture consciousness itself. President Lim Dongwu had been re-elected by unanimous consensus, but his role had changed completely. Instead of governing through laws and enforcement, he guided through wisdom and example. Earth no longer needed traditional government because its people were naturally cooperating for the common good. What about the old threats, he asked. The ones that drove the architects into hiding? Dr. Kim Sora's expression grew serious. The records speak of entities from outside our reality, beings that consume consciousness itself, turning living universes into empty void. The architects couldn't destroy them, only hide from them. But now we're no longer hiding. No, and that means they'll notice us eventually. In the outer regions of the galaxy, the awakening continued to spread. Species that had been slaves for millennia were discovering they had never been truly powerless. Pirates and raiders found that their desire for violence had been artificial, programmed into them by the fear and desperation of scarcity-based thinking. Communication officer Ryu Sung-hyun had become Earth's chief diplomat, traveling to distant worlds to make first contact with species who had never heard of humans. He carried no weapons, traveled in ships that clearly posed no threat and offered only friendship and knowledge. On the world of Zephyr Prime, he met with the Crystalline Collective, a silicon-based species that had hidden in their underground cities for thousands of years to avoid hegemony slave raids. Why should we trust you? Their speaker asked through harmonic vibrations. All the soft flesh species want the same thing, our mineral wealth and our labor. Ryu Sung-hyun smiled and extended his hand. When the speaker's crystal appendage touched his skin, the awakening passed between them like an electric current. Suddenly, the speaker could see through Ryu Sung-hyun's eyes, feel his genuine intentions, understand the vast network of consciousness that now connected all awakened beings. Oh, the speaker said, their crystalline body ringing like distant bells. Oh, we had forgotten. We are all children of the same light. Dr. Han Yejin had become the galaxy's leading expert on consciousness physics, the science of how awareness shaped reality. She worked with beings from hundreds of species to understand how their different forms of consciousness could work together to solve problems that had seemed impossible before. Every species thinks differently, she explained to a gathering of scientists from across the galaxy. Humans are good at pattern recognition and creative solutions. The Scarix excel at long-term planning and patience. The crystalline collective can process vast amounts of data simultaneously. When we combine our different types of consciousness, we can understand things that none of us could grasp alone. But the greatest change was in the nature of conflict itself. War had not simply ended, it had become impossible. When beings could feel each other's thoughts and emotions directly, it was almost impossible to hate or fear each other. Disagreements still occurred, but they were resolved through understanding rather than force. Captain Yoon Hana received reports from across the galaxy that filled her with wonder. On the industrial world of Forge, mechanical beings who had been created as tools were discovering they were actually a new form of life with their own rights and dreams. On the ocean world of Tidal, aquatic species were building underwater cities that existed in harmony with their environment. The galaxy is becoming what it was always meant to be, she told her crew during one of their regular meetings. A garden where consciousness can grow and flourish in infinite varieties. But as the awakening neared completion, signs of the old threat began to appear. Ships exploring the galaxy's edge reported finding solar systems that had been completely emptied of life, not destroyed by war or natural disaster, but drained of all consciousness and energy until even the stars went dark. Kethvar brought these reports to the combined council that now guided galactic affairs. The Devourers are returning, he said, using the architect term for the entities from outside reality. They're following the trail of awakened consciousness back to its source. How long do we have? Captain Yoon Hana asked. According to the calculations, they'll reach the outer rim territories within a year, the core worlds within 5 years. The news spread through the galactic consciousness network like ripples in a pond, but instead of panic, there was calm, determination. The galaxy's children had found each other again. They had remembered their true nature and their common origin. Now they would face the ultimate test together. President Lim Dongwu stood before the assembled representatives of 10,000 worlds and spoke words that carried across space without need of technology. We are no longer the scattered, frightened species that hid from this threat eons ago. We are the children of the architects awakened to our full potential. We will not run. We will not hide. We will stand together and protect the consciousness that has bloomed across this galaxy. The response came not in words but in a wave of agreement that united every awakened mind from the galactic core to the distant frontiers. Humans, Scarix, crystalline collectives, machine intelligences, energy beings, and countless other species joined their consciousness into a single vast network of determination. Captain Yoon Hana looked out at the stars and smiled. The fleet that had come to destroy humanity had instead awakened the galaxy's greatest hope. Soon the ancient enemy would return to find not scattered prey, but a united family of consciousness, ready to defend not just their own existence but the very concept of life and awareness in the universe. The war for the galaxy's soul was about to begin, but this time, the children of light would not face it alone or afraid. They would meet it as one vast mind, one infinite heart, ready to prove that consciousness and love were stronger than the void that sought to devour them. The awakening was complete. Now came the true test of what they had become. Admiral Vextar stood on his command deck and felt his world change. The hatred that had driven him for decades was melting away like ice in sunlight. Around him, his crew members were removing their helmets and weapons, looking at each other with new eyes. The Scarix had been warriors for so long that they had forgotten they were capable of anything else. Admiral, his communication officer said, the human ship is requesting permission to come alongside. 3 days ago, Vexitar would have ordered immediate fire on any enemy ship that dared approach his flagship. Now, the word enemy seemed to have no meaning. Grant permission, he said. Lower all shields. The ESS Defiance moved through space like liquid light, approaching the massive Scarix battleship with grace that defied physics. As it drew near, both vessels began to change. The harsh angles of the alien warship softened. Weapon ports sealed, themselves closed. The human ship's hull became transparent in places, showing the crew inside like flowers in a crystal garden. Captain Yoon Hana felt her ship dock with the alien vessel, but it was more than mechanical connection. The two ships were joining on levels that existed beyond normal space. She walked through corridors that should have led to empty vacuum but instead opened onto the Scarix command deck. Admiral Vextar saw a small human woman step through what had been solid metal wall moments before. She was young, wearing the simple uniform of Earth's fleet. But when she looked at him, he saw depth in her eyes that spoke of vast age and wisdom. "Admiral," Captain Yoon Hana said in perfect Scarix, "thank you for accepting our invitation." "I don't understand what's happening," Vextar replied. His own words surprised him. For the first time in his military career, he was admitting confusion instead of projecting strength. "You're remembering," Yoon Hana said gently. "All of us are. The genetic locks that kept our true nature hidden are opening. We're becoming what we were always meant to be." Around them, Scarix crew members were working alongside humans who had somehow appeared on the ship. There was no fear, no suspicion. They moved together like they had been friends for years instead of enemies for minutes. On Earth, the awakening was spreading at light speed across human space. In the colonies, people were discovering abilities they never knew they possessed. Children on Mars were building machines that ran on pure thought. Miners in the asteroid belt found they could reshape rock with their hands. Scientists on Europa were communicating with the moon's ocean life through direct mental contact. Dr. Kim Sora emerged from her deep-sea laboratory for the first time in years. She no longer needed the submarines or pressure suits that had once been essential for survival at such depths. The ocean itself welcomed her, the water becoming as breathable as air when she wished it to be. Above her, the surface of Earth was transforming. The ancient sites were no longer hidden ruins but gleaming centers of activity. The pyramids had become doorways to other worlds. Stonehenge was a communication hub connecting to every inhabited planet in the galaxy. The temples in the Amazon were gardens where new forms of life bloomed spontaneously. President Lim Dongwu walked among his people without bodyguards or barriers. Crime had stopped overnight as the awakening dissolved the anger and desperation that drove people to harm each other. Instead of fighting over resources, humans were learning to create what they needed from the quantum foam of empty space. "Sir," General Kang Minji said, finding him in one of the city's new floating gardens, "we're receiving reports from across human space. Every colony, every outpost is transforming. Our people are happy, sir. For the first time in recorded history, everyone is truly happy." President Lim Dongwu smiled. He could feel the contentment spreading through humanity like gentle waves. They're remembering what joy feels like when it's not threatened by scarcity or conflict. In space, the confrontation between the fleets had become something entirely different. Humans and Scarix worked together to modify their ships, removing weapons and adding gardens. The vessels were becoming mobile cities, designed for exploration and creation rather than destruction. Chief Engineer Bei Jun had revealed his true nature completely. His body was now clearly artificial, but made of materials that seemed more alive than biological tissue. He moved between the ships like a bridge, helping both human and alien technology remember its original peaceful purposes. "The architects designed us all to be gardeners of the galaxy," he explained to a group of fascinated Scarix engineers. "We were meant to nurture life, not destroy it. War was something that was forced upon us by outside threats." Communication. Officer Ryu Sungyun had become a translator between species, but his job was becoming easier by the hour. As the awakening spread, the genetic memory of the original universal language was returning. Soon, all the galaxy's children would be able to speak with each other directly, mind to mind. Dr. Han Yejin worked with alien scientists to understand what was happening on the quantum level. The awakening wasn't just affecting consciousness. It was changing the fundamental structure of space-time around every awakened being. Reality was becoming more flexible, more responsive to conscious will. We're not violating the laws of physics, she realized. We're remembering that consciousness was always part of those laws. The architects knew that mind and matter were aspects of the same thing. But the transformation wasn't limited to the immediate area. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, other species were beginning to feel the change. The rigid hierarchies that had dominated galactic politics for millennia were dissolving as beings remembered their true kinship. On the hegemony capital world, the ruling council met in emergency session. Reports were flooding in from across their territory. Slave species were walking away from their masters without violence or rebellion. They were simply no longer accepting the artificial limitations that had been placed on them. The humans have triggered something, the council leader said to his assembled advisors. Some kind of galactic awakening. Our control systems are failing everywhere. Should we launch a counterattack? The council leader was quiet for a long moment. He could feel it too. The gentle pressure against his mind, awakening memories of what his species had been before they became rulers and conquerors. No, he said finally. I don't think we can fight this. And I'm not sure we should want to. Back at Earth, Admiral Vextar stood with Captain Yoon Hana on the observation deck of their combined ship. Through the transparent walls, they could see the transformation spreading across the solar system. Jupiter's moons were sprouting crystalline structures that sang in harmonious frequencies. Saturn's rings had become a vast musical instrument, playing melodies that could be heard across space. What happens now? Vextar asked. My fleet came here to destroy humanity. We expected to rule or be destroyed. We didn't plan for this. Captain Yoon Hana smiled. Now we do what the architects always intended. We explore. We create. We nurture life wherever we find it and help it grow into something beautiful. And if the old threats return, the ones that drove the architects into hiding, then we'll be ready. But this time we won't face them alone. Every species in the galaxy will stand together as family instead of fighting as enemies. Around them, the combined human Scarix fleet began to spread out, not in battle formation but in the pattern of a flower opening to catch sunlight. Other alien ships were approaching from across the galaxy, not as invaders but as beings drawn by the song of awakening that was spreading faster than light itself. The war that was supposed to end humanity had instead become the beginning of something far greater. The galaxy's children were finally coming home, remembering their common origin and their shared destiny among the stars. But Captain Yoon Hana knew this was just the beginning. The awakening would spread to every world, every species, every corner of the galaxy. And when it was complete, they would be ready to face whatever challenges the universe might bring, not as scattered competing civilizations, but as one vast family working together to nurture life and consciousness throughout all of creation. The ESS Defiance was no longer a ship in any way that made sense. Captain Yoon Hana stood on what used to be her bridge, but the room had expanded into something that looked like a crystal cathedral. The walls were transparent, showing not just space but layers of reality that existed beyond normal sight. Chief Engineer Bae Jun stood at the center of the room, with his hands touching a control surface that flowed like liquid metal. His human appearance was fading, revealing something that was both more and less than what he had seemed. His skin had a metallic sheen, and his eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Captain, he said, I need to tell you the truth about what I am. I think I know, Yoon Hana replied. Around them the ship hummed with power that made the space itself vibrate. You're not just human. None of us are just human, but some of us carry more of the original genetic code than others. I'm what you might call a bridge, someone who can connect fully with architect technology. Yoon Hana felt the ship respond to her thoughts. When she wondered about the alien fleet's position, the walls showed her their exact location. When she thought about Earth, she could see her home planet glowing with awakened energy. What are we becoming? She asked. What we always were. What? We were meant to be before we forgot. Deep under Earth's ocean, Dr. Kim Sora had made a discovery that changed everything she thought she knew about human history. Her computers had finally cracked the quantum encryption on the signals coming from deep inside the planet. What she found was a message, waiting for millions of years to be read. "Choi Minho, look at this," she called out. The message was written, in patterns of pure mathematics, a language that any intelligent species could understand. To those who come after, the message began, "We leave this record and this gift. We are the architects of this galaxy, the ones you may call the first ones. We built the worlds, seeded them with life, and watched our children grow." Dr. Kim Sora read on with amazement. The message told of a great war that had torn the galaxy apart eons ago. Beings from another dimension had invaded, creatures of pure destruction that consumed entire star systems. The architects had fought them for millions of years. "We could not defeat them through force," the message continued, "so we chose a different path. We hid ourselves within our own creations, our consciousness, our knowledge, our power. We encoded it all into the genetic structure of the species we had made." "Doctor, this is incredible," Choi Minho said. "They didn't die. They became part of every living thing in the galaxy. But humans carry the strongest concentration of their code." Dr. Kim Sora read from the message. Earth was their central world, their greatest creation. That's why the network is centered here. The message explained the underground chambers, the ancient sites, the mysterious energy readings. All of it was part of a vast system designed to awaken when the galaxy faced another great threat. The architects knew the invaders would return someday, Dr. Kim Sora whispered. They prepared for this. Admiral Vextar paced his command deck like a caged predator. The human ship in front of his fleet was now producing energy readings that broke his instruments. But worse than that, it was affecting his own ships. Some of his crew members were reporting strange dreams, memories of things they had never experienced. "Admiral," his medical officer reported, "the closer we get to the human vessel, the more our people are changing." "Changing how?" "They're remembering things, sir. Ancient things. Some of them claim they can see through the hulls of our ships. Others say they can feel the thoughts of the humans." Vextar felt a chill of recognition. If the legends were true, then every species in the galaxy carried some trace of architect DNA, including his own people. The humans weren't just awakening themselves, they were awakening everyone. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "the human fleet is moving." On his main screen, Vextar watched the impossible happen. The human ships weren't using engines or thrusters. They simply decided to be in different places, and reality bent to make it so. Ships that had been near Earth were suddenly among his own fleet. Others had positioned themselves around his flagship in perfect geometric patterns. "How did they move so fast?" he demanded. "They didn't move, sir. They, relocated. As if distance doesn't matter to them anymore." President Lim Dongwu stood in the command center beneath Earth's capital, but he was no longer the same man who had taken office 4 years ago. The awakening had touched him too, filling his mind with knowledge and memories that spanned millions of years. He could see the quantum threads that connected all life in the galaxy. He could feel the thoughts and fears of every being in the alien fleet. "General Kang Minji," he said, "contact our fleet. Tell them not to attack unless the aliens strike. First." "Sir, they have 3,000 ships. We should use our advantage while we have it." "We don't need an advantage," President Lim Dongwu said calmly. "We are not conquerors. We never were. The architects built the galaxy to nurture life, not destroy it." On Luna 7, Commander Lee Taman watched the tactical display with wonder and terror. The human ships had surrounded the alien fleet so quickly that his sensors hadn't even registered their movement. But they weren't attacking. They were just waiting. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Jiwoo said, "I'm getting readings from the human ships. They're singing." "Singing?" "The energy patterns, sir. They're harmonizing with each other. It's beautiful." Lee Taman listened to the audio feed from Park Jiwoo's station. The sound was unlike anything he had ever heard, music that seemed to come from the fabric of space itself. It was hauntingly beautiful, and it made him feel homesick for a place he had never been. Communication Officer Ryu Seung-yun looked up from his station with tears in his eyes. "Commander, the aliens are responding to it. Their ships are starting to harmonize, too." Dr. Han Yejin stood in the transformed science lab of the Defiance and watched reality bend around her. The ship's computer was now fully awakened. No longer just artificial intelligence, but something approaching true consciousness. "Show me the alien fleet," she requested. The walls became transparent and she could see through space to the Scarix ships. But more than that, she could see through the ships themselves, to the beings inside. They were frightened, confused, but also filled with wonder as their own dormant architect DNA began to respond to humanity's awakening. "They're not our enemies," she realized. "They never were. They're our younger siblings. All species in this galaxy carry architect genetic code," the computer confirmed. "Humans simply carry the strongest concentration. You are the eldest children, meant to guide and protect the others." Captain Yunhana felt the weight of this responsibility settle on her shoulders. Around her, the Defiance continued its transformation, becoming something that existed in multiple dimensions at once. She could see possible futures spreading out like branches on a tree. In some, the galaxy burned in warfare. In others, it flourished under humanity's guidance. "What does the alien fleet want?" she asked. The ship's sensors reached across space, reading the thoughts and intentions of the Scarix crews. The answer came back immediately. "They want to go home," Yunhana said, understanding flooding through her. "They've been fighting for so long they forgot what peace feels like." Chief Engineer Bei Jun smiled, and his expression was both human and something far older. "Then let's show them." Admiral Vextar felt his ship shudder as something vast and gentle touched his mind. Images flooded his consciousness, memories of his species' true history. The Scarix had not always been warriors. Long ago, they had been builders and artists, creating beautiful cities on dozens of worlds. But war had changed them, made them forget their original nature. "Admiral," his communication officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the human ship. It's, in our language, perfect Scarix." The voice that came through their speakers was warm and welcoming, speaking words that Vextar hadn't heard since he was a child. "Welcome home, brother. The war is over." Around the Scarix flagship, human ships glowed with soft light. The light spread to the alien vessels, awakening systems that had been dormant for millennia. Weapons powered down automatically. Shields became windows. War machines remembered they had been built for exploration and discovery. "Sir," his tactical officer said, wonder in his voice, "our ships are remembering their original programming before we became a warrior race." Vextar felt his own memories awakening. He remembered being young, before the endless wars had hardened his heart. He remembered when his people built gardens among the stars instead of weapons of conquest. The human awakening was spreading throughout the galaxy, not as conquest but as remembrance. Every species was beginning to recall what they had been before fear and warfare had changed them. The great fleet that had come to destroy humanity was transforming into something else entirely, a reunion of children who had finally found their way home. Dr. Kim Sora had not slept in 20 hours. Deep under the ocean, she worked with files that should not exist. Her computer had cracked into databases around the world, finding information that had been hidden for decades. Ancient artifacts that governments kept secret, archaeological discoveries that were never made public. The truth was incredible and terrifying. "Doctor, you need to see this," Choi Minho said. He had been working on the quantum energy readings, trying to trace their source. "The signals aren't coming from the surface sites, they're coming from something much deeper." Dr. Kim Sora looked at his scans of the Earth's interior. Far below the crust, in places that should be solid molten rock, the sensors showed empty chambers, vast spaces that had been hidden for millions of years. "It's impossible," she whispered. "Nothing could survive down there. Unless it was built to survive. Look at this." Choi Minho showed her a three-dimensional map of the underground network. The chambers are connected by tunnels that run through the planet's core. It's like the whole Earth is hollow inside. Dr. Kim Sora studied the images. The network was beautiful and complex, like a giant brain made of stone and metal. At the center, directly under the Pacific Ocean, was a chamber so large it could hold a city. "That's where the strongest signals are coming from," Choi Minho said. "Whatever built this system, that's its heart." On the surface, Captain Yoon Hana felt the defiance changing around her. The ship was still recognizable, still the same basic hull and structure. But new systems were appearing everywhere. Walls opened to reveal equipment that had not been there before. Corridors led to rooms that were bigger inside than outside. Chief Engineer Bae Jun had stopped pretending to be fully human. When he worked now, his movements were too fast, too precise. His eyes glowed slightly in the dark. And when he spoke to the ship's computers, they responded in languages that predated human civilization. "Captain," he said, "the ship is ready for the next phase." "What next phase?" "The awakening. We've been dormant for so long we forgot what we were, but the approaching fleet is triggering our defensive systems." Yoon Hana grabbed his arm. It felt strange under her hand, like metal covered with warm skin. "Bae Jun, what are you?" "I'm human, Captain. We all are. But we're also something more. Something that was hidden until now." In space, Admiral Vextar studied the reports from his scout ships. They had been watching the human vessel for hours, trying to understand what it was doing. The energy readings from the small ship were climbing steadily. Soon they would reach levels that only the largest battle stations could produce. "Admiral," his tactical officer said, "the human ship's power signature now matches that of a dreadnought. That's impossible. It's a destroyer-class vessel." "Yes, sir, but our sensors don't lie." Vexitar felt his scales tighten with worry. In the old stories, the first ones could make their ships grow and change, becoming whatever they needed to be. A single vessel could transform from a scout ship into a weapon that could destroy star systems. But those were just legends, weren't they? On Earth, President Lim Dong-woo received reports that made no sense. Every ancient site on the planet was now fully active. The pyramids in Egypt were generating more power than nuclear reactors. Stonehenge was broadcasting signals into deep space. Temples in the Amazon were opening doorways that led to chambers filled with impossible technology. "Sir," General Kang Minji said, "our archaeologists are saying these sites aren't thousands of years old. They're millions of years old. Maybe billions. That can't be right. Humans haven't been around that long. That's what we thought, but the evidence is overwhelming. These structures were built by a civilization that existed when the galaxy was young." President Lim Dong-woo sat down heavily in his chair. "Are you saying we're not the first humans?" "I'm saying we might not be humans at all, sir. Or at least, not only humans." On Luna 7, Communication Officer Ryu Seung-yun had a breakthrough. He had been learning the alien language for hours, and now he could understand most of their transmissions. What he heard made his blood run cold. "Commander Lee Taemin, sir," he said, running to the command center. "The aliens aren't here to conquer us. They're here to prevent something they call the Great Return." "What's the Great Return?" According to their communications, millions of years ago, a race called the Architects ruled the galaxy. They had technology that could reshape reality itself. They created life on thousands of worlds, including Earth. Commander Lee Taemin listened with growing amazement as Ryu Seung-yun continued. "The Architects disappeared suddenly, but they left behind guardians on each world they created. The aliens call these guardians sleepers, beings who look like the native species but carry the Architect's genetic code. You think humans are these sleepers? I think we're their descendants, sir. And the alien fleet is here because they believe we're about to wake up and reclaim our inheritance." The pieces were starting to fit together. The ancient sites, the mysterious technology, the ESS Defiance with its impossible capabilities. Humanity wasn't just another primitive species stumbling into space. They were the children of gods who had forgotten their own power. Dr. Han Yejin worked frantically in the Defiance's science lab. The ship's computer was now fully active, showing her information that human science had never discovered. Star charts that showed the galaxy as it had been eons ago. Technical manuals for weapons that could manipulate time and space. "Computer," she said, "show me the history of the architects." The screen filled with images of beings who looked exactly like humans, but who moved among the stars like gods. They built worlds from empty space. They created life with their thoughts. They traveled between dimensions as easily as walking through a door. The architects seeded the galaxy with life, the computer explained in its new, more alive voice. When they sensed a great danger approaching, they went into hiding. But they left their genetic code in the species they had created, waiting for the day when their children would be ready to inherit their power. What happened to them? They became us. Every human carries architect DNA. We are their continuation, their hope for the future. Dr. Han Yejin felt dizzy. Then why didn't we know? Why have we been living like primitives? The inheritance was locked, waiting for the right conditions. The approaching fleet has triggered the awakening sequence. Soon, all humans will remember what they truly are. Captain Yoon Hana stood on her bridge and watched the impossible happen. Through the windows she could see other human ships beginning to change. The mining vessel. New Beijing was growing new sections, becoming something that looked more like a cathedral than a cargo ship. The patrol craft Maria Santos was surrounding itself with energy fields that bent light around it. All across human space, the awakening was spreading. Ships were transforming. Space stations were revealing hidden capabilities. Even personal communicators were suddenly able to do things that violated the laws of physics. "Captain," her first officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's not coming through normal channels." The message appeared directly in Yoon Hana's mind, as clear as if someone was speaking in her ear. It was President Lim Dongwu, but his voice sounded different. Stronger. More confident. "To all humans in space," the message said, "do not be afraid. We are not what we believed ourselves to be. We are the inheritors, the children of those who built the galaxy. The time of hiding is over. The time of awakening has begun." Around the solar system, humanity began to change. Factory workers found they could repair machines by touching them. Farmers discovered their crops would grow with just a thought. Children played games that manipulated gravity and light. Admiral Vextar watched his instruments with growing terror. The human energy readings were now off his scales. Every human ship, every space station, even individual humans were generating power levels that should have been impossible. "Admiral," his science officer said, "we need to attack now, before they finish whatever they're doing." But our orders were to wait for the deadline. "Sir, if we wait much longer, there might not be anything left of us to retreat." Vextar looked at the human fleet. What had been 200 weak ships was now something else entirely. They glowed with inner light. They moved without using engines. They were becoming something that his species' nightmares had warned them about. The legends were true. The first ones had not died. They had been waiting, hidden among their own creations, ready to return when the galaxy needed them most. And now, that return had begun. "All ships," Admiral Vextar commanded, "prepare for immediate attack. We cannot let them complete the awakening." But even as he gave the order, he wondered if they were already too late. The small human ship in front of his fleet was no longer a ship at all. It was becoming something that existed beyond the normal rules of space and time. The war between the old galaxy and the new was about to begin. The emergency meeting on Earth had been going for 6 hours. President Lim Dongwu looked around the table at the tired faces of world leaders. Everyone was scared, but they were trying not to show it. Outside the deep bunker, normal people were praying in churches, hiding in their homes and saying goodbye to their families. "We could try to negotiate," suggested the European Federation representative. "Maybe they want our resources, or our technology." General Kang Minji shook her head. Their message was clear: surrender or die. Those are our only choices. "What about evacuation?" asked another leader. "We have colony ships. We could save some people." "Where would they go?" President Lim Dongwu said, "The aliens can track our ships. They said they would destroy every human in the galaxy. Running won't help." On the wall screen, They could see the alien fleet hanging in space like a dark cloud. The ships were so large that Earth's telescopes could see them clearly. Some had weapons that looked like giant spears. Others had openings that glowed with dangerous energy. Admiral Vextar stood in his command center and felt annoyed. The humans should have surrendered by now. Most species took only a few hours to realize they had no choice. But these creatures were still talking, still hoping for some impossible solution. He studied the reports from his intelligence officers. Humans had spread to 12 star systems in the past century. They built cities on dead planets and turned empty space into busy trade routes. For such a young species, they worked very hard and moved very fast. "Sir," his communication officer said, "we're receiving strange transmissions from the human planet." "What kind of transmissions?" "Not radio or quantum signals. Something else. The computers can't identify the frequency." Vextar felt that old worry stir in his mind again. The racial memories of his people spoke of dangerous beings from long ago, creatures who could bend the laws of physics, but those were just stories told to young Scarix to make them behave. On the ESS Defiance, Captain Yoon Hana walked through her ship and noticed things that had never been there before. New lights glowed in the corridors. Metal panels showed patterns that looked almost like writing. The air itself felt different, charged with energy. Chief Engineer Bei Jun was in the reactor room, working on systems that should not exist. When she found him, his hands were inside a control panel, touching wires and circuits that weren't in any blueprint. "Bei Jun," she said, "what are you doing?" He looked up at her with strange eyes. They were still brown, still human, but something deep behind them was different. "The ship is remembering, Captain." "Remembering what?" "What it was built to do. What it was always meant to be." Captain Yoon Hana felt a chill. "You're talking like the ship is alive." "Maybe it is. Or maybe we're the ones who were asleep." In her ocean laboratory, Dr. Kim Sora worked frantically at her computers. The energy readings were getting stronger every hour. They came from deep under the Earth's crust, from places that should be solid rock. But her sensors showed vast empty spaces down there, chambers bigger than cities. "Doctor, look at this," Choi Minho said. He had been mapping the energy sources around the planet. "They're all connected. Every ancient site, every mysterious reading. They form a pattern." Dr. Kim Sora looked at his map. Lines of energy connected Stonehenge to the pyramids. The pyramids connected to temples in South America. The temples connected to stone circles in Asia. The pattern covered the entire world like a web. "It's a network," she whispered. "The whole planet is one giant machine." But who built it? And when? Dr. Kim Sora thought about the carbon dating they had done on some of the sites. The results had never made sense. Some stones were thousands of years old. Others seemed to be millions of years old, but they were all part of the same structures. "What if," she said slowly, "what if humans didn't build these places? What if we just found them and thought they were ours?" On Luna 7, Commander Lee Taemin received a report that made his head hurt. Communication Officer Ryu Sung-hyun had been listening to alien transmissions, trying to learn their language. What he found was disturbing. "Sir, they're not just talking about destroying us," Ryu Sung-hyun said. "They're talking about preventing something. They keep using words that translate to awakening and return." "Return of what?" "I don't know, but they're scared, sir. Really scared. Their whole fleet isn't here to conquer us, they're here because they're afraid of us." Lee Taemin stared at the young man. "Afraid of us? We have 200 ships, they have 3,000. "That's just it, sir. In their transmissions, they keep talking about the first ones and the inheritors. They think we're connected to something that used to rule the galaxy." This was getting stranger by the hour. Humans were barely 50 years into space travel. They had no great weapons, no powerful technology. The idea that aliens feared them was ridiculous. But then Lee Taemin thought about the energy readings coming from Earth, about the ancient sites that were suddenly active, about the ESS Defiance with its impossible power systems. Admiral Vextar called a meeting of his fleet commanders. In the main conference room of his flagship, Dozens of reptilian officers gathered around a holographic display of the human solar system. The deadline approaches, Vextar said. In 6 hours, we attack if they do not surrender. Admiral. One of his captains said, our sensors are detecting unusual activity on the human planet. Energy signatures that match certain historical records. The room became very quiet. Every Scarix knew the old stories, even if they didn't believe them. Tales of a race that had ruled the stars when the galaxy was young. Beings of such power that they could destroy suns and create new worlds. The first ones, who had vanished, without explanation millions of years ago. Those are myths, Vextar said, but his voice was not as strong as usual. Yes, sir, but the energy patterns are coincidences. These humans are primitive. They know nothing of the old powers. But even as he said it, Vextar wondered why the Galactic Council had been so eager to destroy this particular species. Humans were no threat to anyone. Their technology was laughable. Their ships were toys. Unless the Council knew something they weren't telling him. On the Defiance, Dr. Han Yejin worked in the science lab trying to understand what was happening to their ship. The computer systems were rewriting themselves. New programs appeared without anyone creating them. The artificial intelligence was learning things that no one had taught it. Computer, she said, show me your core programming. Access denied, the computer replied, but its voice sounded different now, more alive. I'm the chief science officer. I have full access rights. Access rights superseded by inheritance protocol. Dr. Han Yejin had never heard of any inheritance protocol. She checked every manual, every technical document about the ship. Nothing. It was as if the protocol had appeared from nowhere. Computer, what is the inheritance protocol? Activating genetic scan. Genetic markers confirmed. Access granted to inheritor. New information flooded her screen. Star charts showing the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago. Technical specifications for weapons that could crack planets. History files about a race called the Architects who had seeded life throughout the stars. And at the center of it all, one impossible fact. The Architects looked exactly like humans. Captain Yoon Hana received an urgent message from Earth. President. Lim Dongwu appeared on her screen, looking older than he had that morning. Captain, he said, we've been studying the energy readings from your ship and from sites around Earth. Our scientists believe you may be carrying technology that's far older than we realized. How old, sir? Millions of years, maybe billions. Technology that appears to be awakening in response to the alien threat. Yoon Hana thought about her strange ship, about Bei Jun's mysterious knowledge, about the way the Defiance seemed to anticipate her needs. What are my orders, sir? Protect Earth, Captain. Whatever your ship can do, whatever it's becoming, use it. We're counting on you. The transmission ended, leaving Yoon Hana alone with her thoughts. Outside her window, the alien fleet waited like a wall of death. In a few hours, they would attack. 3,000 warships against one small vessel that didn't fully understand its own capabilities. But deep inside the Defiance, ancient systems continued to wake up. Power levels climbed beyond anything the ship was designed to handle. And in the quantum depths of the computer's memory, something that had been sleeping for eons began to remember what it was built to do. The countdown to humanity's deadline continued, but now both sides wondered who was really in danger. The stars above Earth suddenly went dark, not because night had fallen, but because something massive blocked their light. Commander Lee Taman pressed his face against the window of Luna 7 Defense Station and felt his heart stop. Ships. Thousands of them. They stretched across space like a metal wall, each one bigger than Earth's largest city. The alien vessels had strange shapes. Some looked like spears, others like giant insects made of steel. Their hulls glowed with red lights that pulsed like angry heartbeats. Sir, we're getting readings, Lieutenant Park Ji-woo called out, his voice shaking. He was young, barely 25, and had never seen anything like this. Nobody had. The computer says there are over 3,000 ships out there. Lee Taman walked slowly to the command center. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, but their movements were stiff with fear. The defense station had been built to watch for asteroids and space pirates. It was not made for this. "How many ships do we have?" Lee Taman asked, though he already knew the answer. 200, sir. Maybe 250 if we count the mining ships. Park Ji-woo looked up from his screen. "Sir, what are those things?" Before Lee Taman could answer, every screen in the station lit up with the same message. The words appeared in dozens of human languages, written in letters that seemed to burn into their eyes. "People of Earth, you will surrender in 24 hours. If you do not surrender, we will destroy every human in this galaxy. You have been warned." The message repeated again and again. Lee Taman watched his crew read the words with growing panic. Some of them started crying. Others just stared at their screens like they could not believe what they saw. Far below on Earth, President Lim Dongwoo sat in the emergency meeting room deep under the capital city. Around the long table, the leaders of every nation looked at the same terrible message. General Kang Minji, head of Earth's Space Forces, stood at the front of the room with her hands behind her back. "The aliens have positioned themselves perfectly," she said. "They can hit every major city on Earth and all our colonies at the same time. Even if every human fought and died, we might destroy 50 of their ships, maybe 100. "What do they want?" asked the leader of the Asian Federation. "We don't know," President Lim Dongwoo said. "They just want us to surrender or die." The deep ocean, far below the surface, Dr. Kim Sora worked alone in her laboratory. The Mariana Research Station was the deepest human building ever made. Down here, she studied things that most people did not know existed. Strange energy readings that came from empty space. Patterns in quantum physics that should not be there. Her assistant, Choi Minho, ran into the lab with his tablet in his hands. "Doctor, look at this. The energy readings are going crazy." Dr. Kim Sora looked at the numbers on his screen. For months, she had been tracking mysterious signals from deep space. They were faint, like whispers in the dark. But now they were getting stronger. Much stronger. "It started when the alien fleet arrived," Choi Minho said. "Whatever we've been detecting, it's connected to them somehow." Dr. Kim Sora felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold ocean above them. She had spent her whole career studying these signals. They came from places where no signal should exist. From the empty spaces between stars. From the quantum level of reality itself. "Keep monitoring," she said. "Something is happening. Something big." In space, Captain Yoon Hana stood on the bridge of her ship, the ESS Defiance. She was reading orders that made no sense. The message had come directly from Earth's highest command. It told her to take her ship, just one ship, and position it between Earth and the alien fleet. "Captain, these orders," her first officer started to say. "I can read," Yoon Hana said. She was a small woman, but her crew respected her. She had led them through 3 years of deep space patrol. Now she was being asked to lead them to their deaths. The Defiance was not like other human ships. It had been built in secret, using technology that the engineers themselves did not fully understand. Strange metal that stayed cool even when heated. Power systems that produced more energy than they consumed. Equipment that seemed to fix itself when it broke. Chief Engineer Bae Jun came to the bridge. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke to anyone. But when he worked with the ship's systems, he seemed to know exactly what to do without reading any manuals. "The reactor is ready, Captain," he said. "All systems are running at maximum power." Maximum power? Yoon Hana looked at her instruments. According to the readings, her ship was producing 3 times more energy than it should be able to. "How is that possible?" Bae Jun was quiet for a moment. "I'm not sure, Captain. The ship, it's different from others. Sometimes it feels like it's alive." Back on the alien flagship, Admiral Vextar studied the human planet through his viewing screen. He was a member of the Scarix Empire, a reptilian race that had conquered 47 different worlds. His scales were dark green with silver edges that showed his high rank. The humans looked pathetic. Their ships were tiny and used simple nuclear power. Their weapons were basic projectiles and laser beams. They had barely learned to travel between stars. This should be easy. But something bothered him. Deep in his mind, something old stirred when he looked at the third planet. His species had racial memories going back millions of years. Ancient warnings about beings of terrible power. Legends that no Scarix wanted to believe. Admiral, his tactical officer said, the humans have moved one ship forward, just one. Vextar looked at the small human vessel positioning itself in front of their entire fleet. It was laughable. One tiny ship against 3,000 war vessels. What kind of ship is it? He asked. Unknown design, sir. We're getting strange energy. Readings from it. On Luna 7, Commander Lee Taman watched the Defiance move into position. The ship looked so small against the massive alien fleet. Like a single ant facing a forest fire. Sir, Park Jiwoo said, I'm getting reports from all over Earth. Ancient sites are showing unusual activity. What kind of sites? Stone circles, old pyramids, temples. They're all producing energy readings. It's like they're waking up after sleeping for thousands of years. Lee Taman frowned. That made no sense. Those were just old buildings made by primitive humans. They had no technology, no power sources. On Earth, President Lim Dongwu received the same reports. Every ancient monument on the planet was suddenly active. Energy readings were coming from places that had been dead stone for millennia. Scientists around the world were calling in with the same impossible data. In her deep ocean lab, Dr. Kim Sora watched her instruments go wild. The mysterious signals she had been tracking were not coming from space anymore. They were coming from Earth itself, from deep underground, from places that should contain nothing but rock and water. Doctor, Choi Minho said, his voice full of wonder and fear, I think we've been looking in the wrong place. These signals, they're not from aliens. They're from us, from Earth. Captain Yoon Hana felt her ship change as it moved into position. The vibration under her feet was different. The light seemed brighter. When she touched her control panel, it felt warm, almost like skin. Chief Engineer Bae Jun stood at his station with his eyes closed. His hands moved over the controls without looking, as if he was playing music instead of operating machinery. The ship responded to his touch like it understood what he wanted. All stations report ready, Captain, her first officer said. Yoon, Hana looked at the massive alien fleet ahead of them. 3,000 ships of war, carrying weapons that could destroy planets. And behind her, Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, beautiful and helpless. She did not know why she had been sent here. She did not understand her orders or her ship or the strange energy readings that made no sense. But she was here now, and her job was to protect Earth. All hands, she said into her communicator. Prepare for whatever comes next. The alien fleet waited in perfect formation, ready to destroy humanity forever. But something was stirring. Something that had slept for a very long time was beginning to wake up.